Hey, what is up, E7 fam? Pat here with a year-end review for Epic 7. I wanted to go through some of the ups and downs, the best parts, and some of the more questionable parts that we've had to deal with as a player base over the course of the last year. This is a little bit different than the normal style of videos that I do here on this channel. Normally, I'm more about guides and things like that. So hopefully you'll excuse me if this video is a little bit out there. This is definitely my first time trying to do a video of this style. But yeah, I thought it would be fun to take a trip down memory lane and revisit what makes this game so great and sometimes makes this game so frustrating. So hopefully you all enjoy it. Have a wonderful new year. First up, we have to talk about the quality of life changes that were brought about to the game in 2021. I feel like most of these are easy to overlook, but it does feel like just yesterday that we were still walking dogs or matching specific colored penguins to get the most XP for our heroes. Things like batch promotions of phantasms at the touch of a button, as well as passively gaining penguins, are amazing changes. The improvements to side story also mean that we can spend less of our stamina and time every week grinding out catalysts, and more time and effort can be put forth to farming gear and making our other heroes stronger. We also received a pseudo inventory space increase this year, courtesy of the new equipment storage feature. Lastly, I really want to give a shout out to the new addition of displaying characters' voiceover artists in the journal. As we saw earlier this year with a game like Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, the lack of strong voiceovers can sometimes be a deal breaker for many gamers, and it really makes me appreciate when a game goes the extra mile to get a strong voice acting cast. Since the launch of the JP server, I really feel like Epic 7 has stepped up their game in this area and is probably the strongest gacha voice cast around, so celebrating those artists who often go unsung by many is a huge win in my book. This year we also got the introduction of a new game mode called Advent. This was a big deal in my book. Epic 7 hasn't really had any new PvE content in a minute. Sure, we did get expeditions in late 2020, but you can rely on your friends for help with those. There really hasn't been any challenging solo PvE content in a while. The last time that the player base was actually challenged was sometime shortly after release when they gave us Asmakalis and its subsequent Hell Raid. We've been grinding the same damn PvE content for nearly 2 years at this point, outside of the occasional Abyss. Advent kind of changed that this year. You get to experience that boss rush style challenge we hadn't had in a while, and it allowed you to make use of some of the more underutilized character and gear in your box. Anytime the game is making you have to think and pick or choose niche units, I think is really good. The rewards weren't even half bad either. 2 advents are already in the bag at this point, and I really can't wait to see the next one. PvE content is very good. Smilegate and Supercave, if you're watching this, please make more. Just like we needed Advent for PvE, I was very happy with the introduction of Emperor rank for PvP. It was a much needed change. As someone who is a competitive player and has played at the highest level for other games, this change really spoke to me. I've watched guildmates and close friends climb up through Champion in previous seasons right up to Legend's doorstep over the course of a few months, and they would end up receiving the exact same rewards that I got for AFKing for months in Champion. That is really disheartening. I've watched people I know that are close to me spend hours of their lives in pursuit of something, and they get nothing. No consolation, no recognition at all. Nothing to distinguish them from the fact that they had beaten some of the best players in the world time and time again. I started to ask myself, why should I even bother to climb high into Champion if I'm not 100% sure I can go for the Legend push? With Emperor, that doubt was finally gone. I finally felt like I could put in a lot of work, and at the end of the day, it would mean something, whether I got Legend or Emperor. Players could visibly see the proof of the hard work that was being put in, and even if I didn't make Legend, at least people could tell, damn, that person's a really good player. And while that might not appeal to you, to some of us, that really does mean a lot. So here's something you guys probably forgot about, because I certainly did when I was making this video. And that is, do you remember how the counter rate wasn't correct for almost 3 years in this game and was finally addressed in 2021? So yeah, the tooltip display for the counter set has been wrong this entire time. For 3 years, like I was saying, most of us have been playing this game thinking that counter was 20%, which is what it was advertised, when in actuality, it was a 30% chance this whole time. This sparked a small amount of controversy as some players started to ask the question, and rightfully so what else is wrong? Thankfully, Smilegate and Super Creative have been fantastic in addressing most issues in the past year and quickly issued players some nice compensation. And to answer the question of what else, the team was even nice enough to give us the rates for everything, including the secret shop, which was also wrong. And also led to some form of compensation. Look, the point is, I trust Smilegate and Super Creative. I think they're on point for most things, okay? 2021 was the first year that I started doing Epic 7 content on YouTube, and one of the first videos that I did for E7 here on my channel was a video called The Case for Katie's. In it, I talked about how Revenge Set was pretty good and Penetration wasn't really too bad either, and I proved that using some basic math. And clearly, no one watched that video. Reddit, Stove, Facebook, everyone basically bemoaned how terrible Katie's was as a hunt, along with Golem. In order to bring the game more in line, several of the gear sets were buffed, including Revenge, Penetration, Attack, Defense, and several others. If it were me though, I probably would have gone with the initial proposal to nerf the speed set, as it still gives too much compared to other sets when you look at the math, but who knows how the player base honestly would have reacted to that change. Regardless, more choices in gear is never a bad thing, and now you actually see more than just speed immunity or counter immunity on every character, so overall, I feel like this was a much needed change. So here's one you probably expected to see on this list, Free ML 5-star. I bet you weren't expecting this one to actually happen though sometime in 2021, right? My Moonlight Connection video is probably the most popular one that I have here on this channel, and I'd like to think I gave some pretty good advice on the subject, so if you're new and watching this video and still haven't chosen, be sure to check that one out. Players around the world rejoiced though, as they could finally live out their dreams of recreating the Descending Blade memes that they had seen online, and I do hope that this free 5-star becomes a trend that we get yearly as the hero pool keeps ballooning. I feel in a game like Epic 7, hero accessibility is going to become a huge issue at some point, and this is one of the best outlets I feel the devs can really address it with. Here's to hoping. Arguably the most useful feature we got this year was the gear Modification Gems. Players have been crying for a long time for a way to reduce the amount of RNG that it takes to gear their favorite heroes in Epic 7. Smilegate and Super Creative have answered this in 2021 like they do with most things by adding yet another system with even more RNG. Can't we just have something for once that isn't just gated by RNG? Is it really that hard, guys? Seriously. Regardless, this new layer of RNG somehow makes the game have less RNG overall than it had. The selector chests that were added to Expeditions, Automation Tower, and Advent are actual godsends, I feel like, for players who are serious about optimizing their characters. Having the specific modification gem to get the specific stat to finally finish gearing the specific character that you're trying to play is amazing, and honestly, because of that, I value these resources as much, or at least very close to how I value Mulligoras. Most of the characters that you see me build on the how to play videos, which are the primary focus of my channel, simply wouldn't be possible without this feature. In my opinion, I think this is the absolute best thing that was added to Epic 7 in 2021. Episode 3 of the story wrapped up this year. Overall, I felt that this was the strongest outing for Epic 7's narrative so far. Edda and Politis, I felt, were the big show stealers here, both being incredibly well written and developed compared to many of their peers that were introduced this year. Perhaps the biggest tragedy, though, of the entire year is the character of Mort. He just fell flat, it felt like, on every single level. He failed to make an impact in PvE, PvP, and even the story itself, in which he was hyped up to be a major player. Here's hoping that the devs show this dragon husbando some love like they are doing with Ilanav in the current holiday side story. Episode 4 also kicked off this year and does look to be a bit more promising, as Adin, not really sure how to pronounce her name, feels like a much better choice for a main character with a much more upbeat attitude. While I do appreciate and love Roz and Mercedes, it took a long time to get to that point. Roz started off as a generic gacha protagonist, and Mercedes' design and demeanor practically scream, "Hi, I'm Mashu Kirilite from Fate Grand Order." Speaking of which, while I do think Epic 7's narrative has gotten significantly better over the years, it does feel like it has a long way to go to catch up to Fate Grand Order, which feels like the undisputed king when it comes to stories in gacha gaming. Perhaps one of the more exciting things this year was the development of Epic 7 as a potential esport. In the spring, we got to watch the very first ever Epic 7 World Championship, and it felt like one of the first glimpses of the game's future towards that commitment of a 10-year plan that the devs have set out on. Overall, I feel like the production quality of this event was quite good, but I do think that a very valuable lesson was learned here that many other games have learned throughout their tenure. With the weekly update nature of certain games, any changes can cause an unbalanced environment, which may not always be the best for a viewing audience. For this reason, many games elect to play the entirety of their World Championship or Finals on a specific version or patch. This wasn't really the case with Epic 7, and one well-timed balance adjustment caused the Finals to be completely dominated by researcher Carrot. In the end, though, Brotherstone ended up becoming our very first world champion for Epic 7. Congratulations to him and his hard-earned victory. Oh boy, let's talk about collabs. Arguably one of the biggest failures of the year for the devs has to be the ReZero collab. Since 2020, the team has promised players a collab to look forward to sometime soon. Months dragged on with no new news or updates at all. Many players were hoarding bookmarks for months on end, and yet radio silence. It straight up became a meme on message boards, social media, and even the Epic 7 official live streams themselves. Where was the collab? When was it coming? Well, in July, the silence was finally broken as the devs alerted us that the collab which we intended to have was delayed, but we would hear something about it by the end of that month. After what felt like an eternity of waiting, the ReZero collab finally dropped in early August. ReZero, of course, being a very beloved anime that exploded onto the scene back in the spring of 2016. A lot of fans, myself included, were very happy with this news. What I think a lot of us weren't happy with was the collab itself. The general lack of story and polish seemed pretty apparent with the collab, and many speculated that this might have actually been a backup collab that was hastily assembled within that 1 month delay. I think the bigger source of frustration, though, came from the actual limited units Amelia and Rem themselves. Both characters were absurdly powerful and quickly took over every facet of PvP in Epic 7. What's worse, both of them were limited and both of their banners were featured at the same time, giving players 2 weeks to scramble and get their copies along with the limited artifacts. Congratulations if you were one of the players who saved all your resources for nearly a year for this collab, but for some of us, like myself, we weren't so lucky and had to pay a hefty price to ensure that Subaru's girls came home. Of course, almost 2 years after ReZero, out of nowhere, the devs were going to drop a That Time I Got Reincarnated as a slime collab on us as well, which probably wasn't the best timing when you consider it. So July was full of limited rerun banners, August was dominated by limited collab characters, and September was also filled with limited meta must-have rerun banners. So of course, your player base is probably feeling it at this point. What could possibly go wrong, right? Well, actually, not a whole heck of a lot. When the Tensura gang finally arrived, it came with a fully fleshed out story, some minigames, and even other guest characters from the series beyond just those that were playable units. The banner units themselves for the collab were Rimuru Tempest and Milam Nava. Rimuru is one of the most overpowered anime characters in recent memory, and they seem to have captured that feel perfectly as he instantly took over the metagame overnight and asserted his dominance. Milam, she wasn't really too much far behind either. If you're still looking to jump on the bandwagon and play both of these heroes, I do have an in-depth guide for both of them in my How to Play series. You can check those out here on the channel. Hopefully this helps. So here's another one you may have missed or forgot. Guardians were buffed in the tail end of 2021 ahead of the Guardian update that we're going to be getting at the beginning of 2022. Zayon, you know, that big giant golem dude, received an ignore effect resistance on his defense break as well as a huge CR pushback. He still costs a whopping 60 stalls, however. Our boy Crom Cruise, who is more affectionately referred to as Tom Cruise by me and the boys, received more cooldown reductions on his activation as well as a huge barrier. Tom was already a pretty solid choice in Abyss, I find, but the jury's still out on whether or not Big Boy's changes will actually impact things. Here's hoping that we'll find out more when they finally put out Abyss 121. Alright, so let's talk about all the heroes that came out this year really quickly. There's over 35 of them by my account, and I will put all of those up on your screen. That is quite a bit, by the way, when you consider other gacha juggernauts like Fate Grand Order and Genshin Impact. Fate Grand Order put out 31 servants this year, and Genshin Impact released 19 new characters this year, at least by my accounts. For Moonlight 5 stars, I feel like the standout of this year has to be Mediator Kowarik. He was originally released in a seemingly underpowered state, which led to the community lovingly referring to him as Mediocre Kekwarik. Of course, that name quickly faded away after his most recent round of buffs, and now he is a hotly contested hero that is good in almost every single scenario. People usually refer to him now as simply Ricky. This was most likely an overall buff, by the way, because of the most despised release of the year, and that award of course goes to Angel of Light Angelica. This character has an AoE silence, unbuffable, skill nullifiers, cleanses, free CR push, and she's also a mage class, so she can hold a slew of broken artifacts, which is just great. The release of this character in some ways honestly feels like the devs have shot themselves in the foot, and it will be interesting to see how they address her going forward, whether that's through nerfs or new heroes or whatever have you. Overall, though, if I had to pick one hero as the best hero from 2021, I think my choice would go to Politis. Since her release, she's been vital in checking many of the game's most powerful characters and compositions. Her build paths also seem to be constantly evolving to adapt with the times, which is a good sign that she will continue to be useful long into the future. On top of that, she is a non-limited, non-Moonlight 5-star hero, so almost everyone has reasonable access to her at some point, which is great when you consider how generically useful she is in a wide variety of game modes. It's honestly a breath of fresh air when a hero is this good, and it doesn't feel like you need 200 Mystic Summons to get them. But yeah, this is again my opinion, and I would love to hear down in the comments below what your thoughts are and what you feel is the best hero from 2021, whether that is simply your favorite, the one you think is the strongest, or the one that was the most impactful. And if you want to learn how to play Politis, I have a guide for her here on this channel, so make sure to check that out. One of the big things I wanted to hit on this video was the game balance for Epic 7 in 2021. For the most part, it's been pretty up or down depending on who you ask. I feel like this is in no small part due to a lot of the Moonlight and limited heroes that were released this year. In the previous section, we already discussed the train wrecks that are Mediator Kowarik as well as Angel of Light Angelica, so we're going to skip those and hope that they get addressed at some point. For the most part, though, I feel like Epic 7 was in a very good spot for a large portion of this year. Even when we were in the researcher carrot or casino metas, there were still answers as long as you were willing to dig for them. While I think things are currently in an incredibly rough spot with the advent of Conqueror Lilius, I still want to hit on some of the high points this year and at least suggest or point out some critiques for the future. So, Crimson Armin and Troublemaker Crozet were probably the two characters that I think were the most underappreciated this year by the player base. Fallen Cecilia has been a mainstay tank for so long, and for players without her, comparable options simply do not exist. The changes to these characters allow for more players to play a bruiser or tank style game without needing a specific ML 5-star to compete. There's a reason you usually see me suggest them in almost every single how to play video that I make as a teammate. They're both very strong and very accessible to most players. Additionally, Luna and Commander Lorena buffs were excellent this year. Both of these two waifu were some of the mainstays of Epic 7 since the very beginning and have fallen on some hard times. Commander Lorena, with her newest buffs, has cemented herself once again as one of the premier PvE characters in this game, much like she was in the past. Luna's buffs also were a long time coming, and they definitely did not disappoint. The biggest money-making waifu of all time got her come up and became a top-tier pick for a few months in high-end World Arena, thanks to her best friends Closure Charles as well as Straze. While she's not as good right now, she's still a very powerful pick and more importantly, a usable hero, which is a great spot for such a beloved character to be in. If you want to learn more on how to use Luna, I have a guide for her here on this channel. And if Smilegate is watching this video and you want to send me a Luna figure because I am a diehard fan of her, please, my DMs are open. Next up, we have to talk about Appleman, aka Green Violet. Seriously, guys, how was he allowed to make it out of testing in his current state? Blue units basically feel like they're in the toilet thanks to this character, and his ability to 1v4 teams by random chance doesn't really feel like good game design. They seem to be trying to remedy this situation with characters like All-Rounder Wanda as well as a new hero like Zahak, so maybe it isn't all bad in the end, but at the same time, again, I just don't really feel like this is good game design. Speaking of not good game design, Bellion. Just Bellion. I simultaneously love this character and hate this character with every fiber of my being. Lastly, why the heck are we buffing characters the way we're buffing them? I would much rather that they buffed, say, 10 to 20 characters every 6 weeks with only 1, maybe 2 very small changes, compared to buffing 5 or so heroes and them getting a laundry list of changes. This is how we keep ending up in situations with heroes like Researcher Carrot or Apocalypse Ravi. Small and incremental changes, I feel like, are better for the health of your game rather than huge sweeping ones that are incredibly difficult to predict. I would also really appreciate in the future if we got notes explaining where they think characters failed so we have better insight and context into why they are making the changes that they make to characters. In the years of consulting work that I have done with games, I really feel like transparency is key with your players, at least for any healthy game. It's done wonders for games such as Final Fantasy XIV, so I don't really know why it can't be applied here. So let's talk about some other odds and ends, things that are coming up of that nature. We're going to be getting an original soundtrack for Epic 7 sometime in the start of the new year. The first single, I'll Be Your Energy, will be out now. I don't really mind having a robust OST with more songs because honestly, Promise kind of slapped. I really enjoyed that song. We also, of course, got a art book that has been plagued with sellouts and high shipping fees. Hopefully Smilegate will bring this art book to Amazon or some other retailer at some point where the price and availability is a little bit more available. I really want my fluffy lady Mercedes skin. Thank you very much. Other things to look forward to are Ancient Inheritance, of course, the new Guild PvE game mode that, if done well, might end up being the future of Epic 7 and something that will generate quite a bit of content, hopefully here on this channel. I really am looking forward to that. It is the #1 thing I'm looking forward to in 2022. Of course, we have Kazaran and the Guardian update coming at the beginning of January as well, and hopefully we will finally get some way to curve the power creep, whether that's through nerfs or some other system that they implement to try to keep the game a bit more balanced and less swingy and reliant on overpowered Moonlight 5 stars in the future. So yeah, that's going to be it for the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this look back on 2021. Let me know down in the comments below what I might have missed. And obviously, of course, let me know what you're looking forward to in 2022. I really like this game. This is probably the best gacha game that I have ever played. So I'm really hoping it can stand the test of time. And I can hopefully do another one of these next year for a 2022 review of said game. Until then, enjoy your New Year's. And I will catch you all in the next one. Later.